So, what if the biggest thing holding your child back wasn't their behavior, but was actually their nervous system? Hi, I'm Dr. Roseann, and we're talking about all those ways our nervous system creates silent sabotage. And your child's nervous system is actually probably the root cause of what is keeping them stuck. And really, your family nervous system is keeping you stuck. So let's talk about our nervous system, help you to understand dysregulation, why it's so important. So, our nervous system can either be in a regulated parasympathetic state or it can move or be in a stress sympathetic dominant state. What it is part of is the autonomic nervous system. And I'm starting out with all this geeky stuff because there is really a science behind your child's behavior. And it's not what you think. It's not nervous, neurotransmitters that have run amok. Yes, that's part of it. It's not always genetics, but it's a dysregulated nervous system. When you start to understand that some of those common but overlooked behaviors are really a sign that your child is either moving in a way where they have understimulated or overstimulated behaviors, they're a reflection of a dysregulated nervous system. And I really want you to hear this because when you do, you're going to start rethinking your child's clinical labels or multiple clinical labels. But when we start thinking about what are the behaviors, what are the symptoms we see, we can move towards solutions, science backed solutions. And you actually have the power to help your child regulate. We're going to talk about that at the end, but I want you to really start understanding how your child's nervous system dysregulation is actually the saboteur. Because when you do, you get that empowerment. And everything I do, if you're new to me, you can go to drroseann.com/help. And yet you'll take a solution matcher that will guide you to the right solution. You can also just keep listening and you can find out more about, ways to regulate your nervous system, all science backed from somebody with 3 decades of clinical experience. I'm not just some random health coach. Yes, I happen to be a mom of kids. I have levels of dysregulation, but I had been supporting kids and families, had the privilege of supporting kids and families for long before I had my own kids, and I've helped tens of thousands of kids. I crack up at some of the ads I see. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with a health coach supporting somebody, but they don't understand the brain. They don't understand the nervous system. They advertise, some type of something that isn't really going to move the dial. And when you start with the nervous system, right? Calm the brain, everything else follows. Nothing can happen without a regulated nervous system. Learning isn't going to happen in the same way. So let's talk about some of the behaviors you might see, right? So restlessness, hyperactivity, difficulty focusing. Of course, we always think of hyper big reactions, explosions, kids that can't stand a loud noise or chewing in the case of my house. And they produce these big emotional reactions. Emotional dysregulation is one of the top reasons people come to me. Now, the root causes of dysregulation can be quite varied. Sometimes you have a kid that maybe there was a birth trauma. Maybe there are genetics at play. Maybe there's a lot of genetic variants that's setting your kid up for absorbing more stress in their environment. Maybe they're in a wrong educational environment that doesn't speak to their strengths. I see that an awful lot. It's why there's a real move to homeschooling. There's a lot of kids that go to private schools. My kids could, we tried public school. There's nothing wrong with public school people. People do great there. Lots of kids do. But certain kids don't. And I meet people. I had a mom, 4 kids, 4 different schools. I was like, how do you do it? She's like, I don't know. Because her kids were all neurodivergent. They were also gifted kids in terms of athletics. Luckily, everybody wanted them. And so you do what you got to do, right? You know what I'm saying? And it's important, to support your kids in their learning. And there's no right or wrong. There's only what's right for your child and your family and where you're at. Don't judge another mother. I hate that. So these root causes of nervous system dysregulation can be vast. They could be exposure to chemicals, it could be mold, it could be infections and toxins. It could be a dysregulated parent at home. Just saying, you could have had your own trauma and you're stuck in a trauma loop, right? And their impact is wide. So it affects academics. It causes them to have struggles socially within the family. And most importantly, to be emotionally stuck, right? So how are kids and families, like, what keeps them stuck, right? So a reactivity pattern, whether it's back and forth between parents, between siblings, really can be one of the greatest reasons why people get stuck and they get burnt out, because you go from treatment to treatment, you go from therapist to therapist. Um, you know, Therapists mean well, but I'm telling you, therapists, I know a lot of you listen to me. There are a lot of bad therapists, and there are a lot of therapists who think they're helping people because they went through it and they haven't properly dealt with their own stuff. I've trained so many therapists. I'm done. Like, yes, there will be a mastermind, but you be carefully screened. There's a wait list for it. It's mostly physicians on my list. And it's not a Mickey Mouse mastermind, as Tony would say. Like, it's a 1 year, like, this is not a joke kind of mastermind. I need to pass on my knowledge, but that's another story. But therapists have well intention, but they aren't really doing the deep work that parents need. Parents need guidance. They need to understand why this is happening. That's why dysregulation is key, and understanding it and how to regulate is key. But they need guidance. They need practical guidance through the behaviors, right? That's my beef with a lot of these coaches. What guidance do you have? What clinical training do you have? You have to work. I've worked with the most dysregulated people. I've worked in psychiatric hospitals. I've worked in residential treatment centers. For a kid to be in a residential, it's got to be full on poop show people. And let me tell you, every walk of life was there, but predominance of people with trauma. And, we're learning so much more about trauma, and it really can create a big feeders for reactivity. So if you don't got it together, it's going to keep coming back and back and back and back. And you're meeting your kid because you're reactive. When you're meeting them with that reactivity, you're just groundhogging it. It's going to be a problem. And this dysregulation keeps people stuck also too because of learned helplessness. I get people more and more just so worn out, not the kids, even though they'll have learned helplessness. They're teenagers, young adults. That's all my failure to launch people are learned helplessness. But parents are like, I'm sorry, not going to do this. My pastor told me to come. The doctor told me to come. I'm listening to your podcast. Prove to me this is going to help. And I'm like, honey, you need to prove this yourself. I mean, getting our nervous system regulated is a piece of cake on my end. It really is. What are you going to do to self-regulate? And how are you going to change to make those micro changes that's going to create self-regulation for your child and break the stuckness? That tends to be the hardest part of this whole darn thing, people, right? So what also happens is when people are stuck, there is active avoidance and withdrawal, right? Your kids like, I'm not doing it. Sorry, not going to happen. And when you, on the flip side, do things that actually regulate the nervous system, I think one of the greatest things I always tell people is expect a softening. So some of my greatest, most awesome cases have been with autistics, just to help support them and being who they are. And I always tell parents, right, because they have the most rigid nervous system of any nervous system I ever see, just hands down. And what I always say is, you're going to see softening. They're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, you're going to see softening. They're not going to be as resistant to things, because avoidance, you can't even get in there, right? And when that nervous system is so dysregulated, you move into a survival mode. Like, sorry, not going to do it. And we've all been there. But think about your child. They lack the developmental and emotional maturity to be able to challenge this dysregulation, the discomfort that comes along. One of the other things that I see that really gets nervous system stuck is that it breaks down the immune system. And being that I work with so many kids with PANS and PANDAS, and more people have it than they realize, it creates neuroinflammation, it creates a misdirected immune response, it creates systemic inflammation. And so that dysregulation keeps people stuck in an immune system dysregulation. And it's part of why so many people do seek me out, right? And I want you to start to really understand stuckness isn't just behavior, it's really about that nervous system allowing the learning to occur, allowing healing to occur, allowing attention to get better, allowing memory to get better. You just heard about all the ways that self-regulation, 7 ways self-regulation helps a kid, right? We have to start thinking, why is my kid stuck? It is nervous system regulation, people. Can I say it again? And nervous system dysregulation is the greatest threat to your child's mental health and well-being. Okay. So what do you do about it? So I am talking more and more about my COMS parenting protocol. It's actually just a COMS protocol. Teachers can use it. Um, uh, Anybody can use it. So 5 steps. 1, the C, co-regulate. Okay. Get it together. Don't care what you got to do it healthily. You owe it to yourself and you owe it to all future generations. I can't express this enough, right? This is actually a superpower. Now, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be regulated most of the time. You can do it. A, avoid personalizing the behavior. Get over it. Your kid is not doing this on purpose. Their nervous system is stuck in a behavior. L, look for those root causes. Root causes can be multifactorial, not just genetics, peeps. It could be in so many environmental things, and it might not be immediately before the behavior, but there's a wide variety of things. Go back and listen to that episode. Um, M, model the coping skills. Show them the behaviors you want, right? They need support, okay? And the 5th, S, support and reinforce. Support and reinforce. So you have to, whatever progress they make, you've got to support and reinforce those steps. That's how you create neurological change. It's skills, not pills. Okay. And I promise you, you can do this. If you need support, you know where I am. You go to drroseann.com/help. And I hope this really got you thinking differently. Your kid's behavior isn't the problem. Their nervous system is.